One of the greatest things a car can do is be respected by both the people who are interested in cars and the people who aren't. That's easy for a Ferrari, but for cheap cars it's very rare. The Mini Cooper comes to mind, the Beetle comes to mind, and one French car that we may not have heard of back in Canada, the Renault Twingo. And here we are driving the Renault Twingo. I drove the newer one and it actually made me more excited to drive the original one because I found that one to be just kind of every small car, but the Twingo, the original one, was different. It set a new era for the small city car. And first off, I mean, the visibility in here, it's the greenhouse. Everything is visible. The car still feels very small. And as I said with the other one, it feels much more at home on these small European roads than my Kia Sportage rental car does.
Well, I'm Tim. I am 46 years old. As you can see, I'm from the Netherlands. And this is my son.
Yeah, I'm Lucas. I'm 10 years old and I love gaming.
I own 3 in the moment, yes. Why? That's a good question. Sometimes you see a car and then you think, I must have it.
The original designer of the car, Patrick, said that this car was designed to look a little bit like a frog, and it does, and it's a very endearing face. Amazingly, his list of other hits includes the Renault Aventime and the Ford Sierra, which I had back in Canada as a Merkur XR4Ti. So now we'll see what the Twingo has to offer. With 58 horsepower on tap, it revs out a little bit. It's an engaging little car. I like the little engine. It wants to go. Like many small cars with relatively small engines, it's something you have to rev out to really get. The Twingo is a car that doesn't base itself off of its mechanics. It's a pretty simple car, making 58 horsepower in the 8-valve version and only about 75 horsepower in the 16-valve version. It's this face, it's the smile, it's the emotions that you get when you walk up to it that make the Twingo so special and transcends it over time. It's a car like the Beetle that really never got hopped up until later on. The Twingos are now getting modified, but that was never what they were about. On the highway, it's amazingly stable. The French build very comfortable cars, unless they're sport options. They're very complacent. The suspension is very nice. It's a non-power steering car. You don't notice that the moment you start driving. It feels very nice, very planted. And the sunroof, you would expect to have more wind, but with the factory original Twingo wind guards and the sunroof open, it's a very pleasant place to be. This feels a lot like my Volkswagen Cabrio.
Like the Beetle, the Twingo also have a very big smile, like Herbie, but the connection is maybe better with the Citroën 2 Chevaux.
Yes, the 2CV. The significance in that sentence is it's French. The French weirdness is delightful here. Renault seem to have these cloth top roofs that are sunroofs, but also cloth. I've never understood why they do it, but they did it on the Fuego, which is a car I would love to drive, as well as the Twingo. I've never understood it. I absolutely adore it. I can only imagine it would be very cold in Canada where I live, but I don't care. I want to have one. Part of the French eclecticness is the taillights are different. That's a very not North American thing. If the car isn't symmetrical, it's wrong. But in the Twingo, well, you needed a reverse light, not 2. You just needed a reverse light, and I love that it's different on each side.
It's fascinating and cool and also maddening, and I guess that's France in a nutshell, isn't it?
When I originally set out to drive the Twingo, I really didn't know how much of a cultural significance this car had, but it really did resonate with a lot of people. Tim started showing me his fascinating collection of accessories that you could order from a Renault dealer. These cars really did set off a happy smile face. But at the end of the day, they are also hatchbacks. For every person that bought a Twingo because it was cute, someone else bought it because it was fuel efficient.
Yeah, it was very well sold little car. And now they are still around, but they are going fast to the scrapyard, so I want to collect them now. But only 3. It's really enough.
I think in Canada, unfortunately, French cars, well, they made a small splash in the 80s when they were the Renaults that were imported by AMC and the last of the Peugeots. And I think we got a fairly unfortunate poor representation of them, or we at least have a poor idea of what they are. I think we think they're electrical problems, they're unreliable, but the Twingos have actually proved to be very reliable little cars. They're not terribly complicated, and even the newer ones have been fairly robust in their reliability. It's a car that borrowed an older engine and used it because it was cheap to produce. The Twingo, in the end of the day, was a city car. And so in order to make it effective and affordable, you had to use a regular engine that it came with. Sure, later facelift models came with redesigned engines that made more power, and there were some sporty additions that came, but the Twingo at its heart was a very happy budget car.
As I handed the keys back to Tim, I told him of my Goldilocks problem. The original Twingo made me smile every time I looked at it, where the second generation Twingo made me smile when I drove it. The 16-valve 75-horse engine was just more fun to me. The 8-valve, while fine, didn't get me excited. And with that knowledge, I am unfortunately, for my wallet, genuinely looking at how to import a 16-valve first-gen Twingo into Canada.
The first-gen Twingo was exactly what I was hoping it would be. Every small 90s car has much more of a greenhouse effect, which I'm sure is because they're not nearly as safe as modern ones, but there's something that's unique about how they drive. I can't thank Tim enough for the chance to drive this thing, and I'm very thankful he would allow me to use it. It's just a charming little car that I hope to have one day of my own, because I really would like one of these. If you are interested in learning more about these cars, the Twingo One group on Facebook, I'll put it here, is a Dutch Twingo group. That's how I found Tim, as well as he has a YouTube channel of his own called Twingo Mania, where he showcases his 3 Twingos and the fun charm that is these cars.